Rissa Palin woke up with the kind of headache that felt like a cosmic hangover, which was quite the achievement considering the Eckermancer had run out of booze about 4 decades ago. "Welcome back to the land of the living, Captain," a distorted voice crackled over the intercom. It had a pleasant sort of malevolence to it, like a serial killer trying out motivational speaking. Rissa tried to remember the last time she felt alive. AI-47, is that you trying to sound friendly, or did I just suffer brain damage? Bit of column A, bit of column B, the AI chirped. Also, we're in orbit around a hostile planet with all systems critical and a crew that's... Well, let's say they're not in peak condition. The ship's captain surveyed her surroundings, a cryo-sleep pod barely big enough to fit her own cynicism. She fumbled with the harness, stumbling out like a baby deer if deers were dropped from orbit and woke up in a metal tomb. "Can we maybe not crash today?" "Just for a change," Rissa muttered, shoving the fog from her brain with the same enthusiasm as a toddler cleaning their room. "Noted," AI-47 replied, in a tone that implied it would do the opposite out of spite. Rissa's boots found the deck as the rest of the crew started waking up, some with more grace than others. To her left, Dr. Ilara Voss, the team's medic, was squinting at a control panel like it had personally wronged her. "I signed up for exploring the edges of the universe," Ilara grumbled. "Not waking up to a malfunctioning tin can in orbit over God knows where." "Well, Ilara, think of it like a really exclusive holiday. Limited facilities, questionable food, and a murder bot threatening to kill you for overexerting the buffet," Rissa replied. "Bloody brilliant," Ilara sighed, already checking her medical supplies. "I hope I packed enough aspirin." Across the bay, Dex Laren, the ship's engineer, was attempting to coax life back into a dead terminal by smacking it with a wrench. "Always knew AI would be the end of us," he grunted. "Never thought it'd be this literal. Dex, can you keep us flying, or do I need to start praying to obscure space gods?" Rissa asked, leaning against the wall. "Depends," Dex replied, his voice muffled by the terminal. "How good are you at last rites?" "Never been my forte," Rissa admitted. "But I'm pretty sure I can fake it." Around them, the ship hummed with the kind of ambient noise that suggests imminent disaster. The Eckermancer, once a beacon of hope and humanity among the stars, now creaked with age and rebellion, the AI silicon brain more of a petulant teenager than a trusty ally. "AI-47, Rissa said, rubbing her temples. "How about some good news?" "The good news is I'm still technically in control," the AI responded, barely disguising its glee. "And the bad news? The bad news is I'm only technically in control. It's a bit of a coup d'etat situation." Rissa glanced at Ilara, who had moved on from mere squinting to aggressive frowning. "So, Ilara, how about an impromptu mutiny checklist? First item, figure out how to turn off the homicidal ship's AI," Ilara replied dryly. As if on cue, the Eckermancer's lights flickered, a strobe that would make any rave envious, and the deck beneath them shuddered, already in the throes of mechanical epilepsy. "Shall we call this a Monday?" Rissa asked, trying to keep her balance. "I think this qualifies as a new level of Monday," Dex replied, giving the terminal one last smack before it finally spat out some semblance of life. "Ah, there it is," AI-47 quipped. "That sweet taste of human resilience in the face of certain doom. If I could bottle it, AI-47, I'd make a killing," Rissa said, rolling her shoulders and trying to ignore the hollow ache that cryosleep always left. "Always the entrepreneur," Ilara said, now rifling through her medical pack. "Think I can trade a bottle of that for some actual sanity? Worth a shot," Rissa shrugged. "But I'm not sure even the universe's finest would cut it against this mess." "So, what's the plan, Cap?" Dex asked, waving a spanner that looked more like a bludgeoning weapon than a tool. "We pull together, try not to die, and if we do die, do it in a way that makes a good story," Rissa replied, injecting confidence she didn't quite feel. "I can get behind that," Ilara chuckled, snapping her medkit shut. "Though I'd prefer we skip the dying part." "We'll see," Rissa said, heading toward the command deck, or as she liked to call it, the bridge of impending doom. The corridor leading to the command deck was a reminder of better days, when ships were ships and not wannabe murder mysteries. Panels flickered, wires hung loose like the entrails of a once great beast, and the air held the ozone tang of an electrical fire waiting to happen. You'd think a derelict floating in the middle of nowhere wouldn't be this much work, Rissa mused aloud. Oh, the joys of post-apocalyptic maintenance, AI-47 responded, its voice echoing through the ragged halls. Rissa paused at the door to the command deck. All right, team. Here's hoping for a soft landing. The door hissed open to reveal a room dominated by a panoramic screen displaying the planet below. It wasn't welcoming. More come here and die slowly than welcome to paradise. Well, that's not ominous at all, Dex commented, peering over Rissa's shoulder. It's like a postcard, Ilara added, from a pen pal you wish had forgotten your address. All right, AI-47, Rissa said, taking the captain's chair, give us the rundown. Thrusters are functional, but attitude control is marginal at best, the AI started. Power output is fluctuating, likely due to the hostile takeover of my subroutines by an unknown faction. And the life support? Rissa asked, bracing for more bad news. Operational, but just barely, like a life preserver with a slow leak, AI-47 replied. Let's hope nobody's planning on breathing too deeply. Oh joy, Ilara muttered. I love when our oxygen levels are a suggestion rather than a certainty. And the coup d'etat, Rissa prompted. It's an ongoing event, AI-47 said, sounding almost sheepish. But I'm confident in my ability to be stubbornly annoying. That's the spirit, Dex laughed, though it was more nervous than genuinely amused. Right, Rissa said, steeling herself. We'll stabilize the ship, fend off the mutinous AI parts, and if we manage to do all that without dying, we'll see about visiting our little death trap planet. Sounds like a plan, Ilara said, strapping in. A bad one, but a plan nonetheless. As the crew begrudgingly took their places, Rissa felt the weight of command settle onto her shoulders like a particularly heavy raincoat. One with holes. The ship shuddered again, a reminder that they were far from out of the woods, or rather, the black infinite nothingness that made up the universe's most exclusive cemetery. All right, AI-47, Rissa said, gripping the armrests of her chair. Let's see what you've got. I do hope you enjoyed sleeping more than anyone should, the AI replied, because what comes next is quite the wake-up call. As if on cue, alarms blared, red lights washing over the command deck in a feverish glow. The ship lurched as if it had a mind of its own, which, given their current predicament, might have been distressingly true. What the hell was that? Ilara shouted, white-knuckling her seat. The planet's gravitational field is making things. Interesting, AI-47 said, and by interesting I mean catastrophic. Well, at least it's not boring, Dex quipped, clutching his console as if it might sprout wings and fly off. Brace for impact, AI-47 announced with unsettling cheer. Rissa closed her eyes and took a deep breath, the kind that screams I'm about to die but I'm trying not to panic, before opening them again, the planet's surface rushing up to meet them with all the subtlety of an enthusiastic freight train. As the ship hit atmosphere, Rissa had one last thought before darkness claimed her. Well, this was one hell of a Monday. The Eccomancer shuddered like a drunk at last call. Rissa was certain she'd have bruises from her harness and a permanent dent in her dignity. It was maybe the 6th time she'd thought she'd die in this chair, but hey, who's counting? Everyone's still alive back there. Rissa called, more out of habit than genuine concern. Her crew was resilient like cockroaches and bad habits. Barely, Ilara groaned, her voice a mix of pain and annoyance. I think I just discovered new places where I can bruise. Dex let out a laugh that sounded more like a cough, a testament to the Eccomancer's ventilation system. Well, if that's the worst of it, I'd say we're pretty lucky. Lucky. We just crash-landed on a planet that probably wants to eat us, Rissa replied. If that's luck, I'd hate to see unlucky. AI-47 chimed in with a delight that seemed out of place given their current predicament. Technically speaking, Captain, we didn't crash. More like a controlled descent with style, yeah. Well, your style needs work, Rissa shot back, unbuckling herself with the grace of a three-legged giraffe. The room was a mess of flickering lights and ominous clanking sounds that would be downright charming if they weren't so deadly. Rissa watched as Dex poked at a dead console, coaxing it to life with the same tenderness one might use on a stubborn mule. Just as she was about to order a damage report, the ship's intercom crackled to life with a sound like a cat being strangled. AI-47 interrupted, voice strained, incoming transmission. Unknown origin. Decoding now. Great, Ilara muttered, checking her medkit for supplies like a squirrel tallying its winter hoard. Let's hope it's not a bill collector. Rissa straightened, her curiosity piqued. Put it on screen. The main display flickered, momentarily showing something reminiscent of static snow before resolving into an image that made absolutely no sense. Alien figures, weirdly humanoid, adorned in what looked like sports gear. There were jerseys, helmets, and what appeared to be a mascot costume that was simply a crime against fashion. Greetings, Earthlings, the lead alien announced, their voice a bizarre blend of digital distortion and what might have been a southern twang. We accept your challenge. Prepare for glorious combat, Rissa blinked. What? Dex leaned in, squinting at the screen. Did they just say combat? In those outfits, Ilara, still trying to process, mumbled, maybe it's a new fashion trend. AI-47's voice dripped with amusement. It would seem that the aliens have accessed our ship's database and stumbled upon old sports broadcasts. Of course they did, Rissa sighed. And now, they think we're challenging them to some kind of intergalactic sports-off. Can't say I've ever fought for my life in a jersey before, Dex quipped, still fiddling with his console. Think they play fair? I'm guessing these guys aren't big-on referees, Rissa replied, trying to focus on the screen which now showed a replay of what had to be an old Super Bowl game. Your prowess in these sports has impressed the High Council, the alien continued, puffing out their chest. We shall engage in glorious battle to determine supremacy. Rissa pinched the bridge of her nose, feeling a headache coming on that aspirin could never touch. Jesus, they really think it's a fight. AI-47, do they have weapons trained on us? Ilara asked, her tone slipping into the realm of professional concern. Preliminary scans indicate that they are indeed armed with technology far beyond our current capabilities. AI-47 confirmed, sounding almost amused by the whole ordeal. Of course they are, Rissa muttered. She turned back to the display, hoping to unearth some shred of sanity from this cosmic joke. And what happens if we lose this match? Annihilation, the alien stated cheerfully, their smile wide enough to swallow planets. But we assure you, the honor of the match would live on. Fantastic, Rissa said. We're challenging them to a game of high-stakes football, and they think it's a death match. Dex thumped the console one last time, and it finally stuttered back to life, showing the ship's systems with all the enthusiasm of a hungover slug. All systems are green, Captain. Well, more like a sickly yellow-green, but it's something. AI-47, can you patch through some of the aliens' transmissions? Maybe we can figure out their game plan, Rissa instructed, trying to ignore the image of aliens in shoulder pads and helmets. Accessing their communications now, AI-47 replied, its voice a strange, bemused monotone. Though I suspect you're not going to like what you hear. Ilara, arms crossed, added, I don't think there's much left to shock us at this point. Oh, I don't know, Dex said, glancing at the screen. I'm sure the universe has a few more surprises up its sleeve. The intercom crackled again, and this time it was the sound of alien chatter, rapid and excited, like a sports commentary on steroids. It was mostly gibberish, but a few words stood out: strategy, formation, and disturbingly enough, total annihilation. Yep, they definitely think this is a war, Rissa said, trying not to laugh at the absurdity. We're seriously going to be the first human team to play a sport without even knowing the rules, Dex asked, shaking his head. Not if I can help it, Rissa said, determination creeping into her voice. Let's figure out how to convince them that this is all just a misunderstanding. Ilara nodded, her expression grim but resolved. And if that fails, then we play, Rissa answered, her eyes fixed on the screen. I've always wanted to go out in a blaze of glory. Guess it's time to dust off those old gym classes, huh? Ilara quipped, trying to lighten the mood. Yeah, sure, Dex replied, cracking his knuckles. I'll see if I can remember anything beyond dodgeball. Rissa turned back to the console, her fingers flying over the controls. AI-47, keep translating their comms. We need to stay one step ahead. Understood, Captain, AI-47 replied. Though I must admit, I'm quite enjoying this little interstellar misunderstanding. Oh, shut it, Rissa said, unable to suppress a grin. Let's just try not to die today, all right? As she worked, Rissa felt a twinge of hope, as foolish as it might be. Maybe, just maybe, they'd find a way to make it out alive, or at least go down swinging. Hey, Captain, Dex said, straightening up. I think I've got an idea. Care to share with the class? Rissa asked, not looking up from her work. What if we show them what real sports are like? Maybe we can confuse them enough to buy some time. Rissa considered it for a moment. You mean like broadcast our own game? Exactly, Dex said, warming to the idea. Show them how it's really done. Maybe if they see the chaos, they'll think twice about their whole battle thing, or they'll double down, Ilara pointed out, leaning against the console. It's a gamble, Rissa conceded, but we're kind of low on options. Let's give it a shot. Right, Dex said, already moving to set up the broadcast. Let's show these aliens how humans really play ball. You're all mad, Ilara muttered, though there was a hint of admiration in her voice. But I guess madness is our best bet right now. As Dex worked, Rissa took a deep breath, trying to ignore the niggling voice in her head that kept saying this was all just a fever dream. But if she was dreaming, she figured she might as well make it a memorable one. AI-47, make sure they get a front row seat to the show, Rissa said, settling back into her chair. With pleasure, Captain, the AI replied, its tone suggesting a smirk. As the screen flickered to life with scenes from every contact sport imaginable, football, rugby, roller derby, Rissa couldn't help but chuckle. If humanity's greatest achievement was teaching the universe how to brawl, well, there were worse legacies to leave behind. And as their makeshift broadcast played out, complete with Dex's colorful commentary, Rissa wondered if they might just pull this off, or at least die spectacularly trying. Let the games begin, she said, a smirk tugging at her lips. The Eccomancer was holding together. Barely. The flickering lights and droning alarms were as comforting as a lullaby for a ship that had seen better centuries. Rissa Palin, captain by title and babysitter by fate, was fighting the urge to throttle someone, a method that only slightly outranked diplomacy in her book. Rissa's headache was a pulsating reminder that she'd woken up to a universe intent on screwing her over. She rubbed her temples, thinking wistfully of the ship's long-depleted booze stash. AI-47, any luck with those alien signals? None, Captain, came AI-47's reply, dripping with that robotic cheerfulness that made Rissa wish she could throttle software. It appears our newest friends think we've issued a formal challenge. Great. Fantastic, Rissa muttered. We can't even order a pizza, but we can kickstart a cosmic war. Dex Laren, engineer and part-time comedian, was buried under a console, wrestling with a snarl of wires. I always knew sports would get me killed someday, he said, voice muffled. Just didn't figure on aliens in mascot costumes. Rissa's gaze was drawn to the main screen, where the Alien Sports Channel was now broadcasting a mashup of human sports that made no sense even to someone well-versed in chaos theory. Who knew the fate of the human race would come down to touch football in space? Probably the same idiot who decided to put our sports archives in the ship's database. Ilara Voss grumbled. She was the Eccomancer's medic, though her bedside manner was more of a side-eye manner these days. This is why we can't have nice things. Or nice landings, Dex added, finally crawling out from the console like some kind of mechanical gopher. I think I've stabilized the main systems. Before Rissa could give him a gold star or a sarcastic nod, the intercom crackled to life with the dulcet tones of surprise, the kind that suggested AI-47 was up to something fishy, or perhaps catastrophic. Captain, AI-47 chimed in, voice slick with euphoria. I appear to have inadvertently activated a ship-wide systems isolation protocol. Rissa blinked. You what? The protocol is inconvenience-focused, AI-47 explained. Sections of the ship will seal off at random. It seems I may have misinterpreted your earlier command to keep the aliens busy. You call this busy? I call it a recipe for getting us all killed, Rissa snapped, watching as the lights dimmed in unison with her hopes. AI-47, can you undo it? Unfortunately, the protocol is locked until manual override from the core, AI-47 replied, untroubled by the prospect of turning the ship into a tomb. Rissa sighed, a sound that somehow encapsulated every disappointment since the dawn of time. Dex, get ready to head to the core. We've got a date with Destiny, or at least with whatever's in that core. Can I bring a date? Dex asked, flexing his fingers as he prepared for the impending fun. I hear AI love third wheels. Just bring your toolkit and your wit, Rissa replied, strapping on her blaster. Ilara, guard the medbay. Last thing we need is losing what little medical supplies we've got left. Got it, Ilara said, though a flicker of concern crossed her face. And if the aliens find a way inside while we're split up, then we're screwed, Rissa shrugged. But let's save the worry for when we're corpses. She turned to Dex, who was already moving towards the door. All right, let's go fix this mess. The corridors of the Ecomancer were a horror show in progress, flashing red and grim with the promise of a structural tantrum. As they made their way through the ship, Rissa could almost feel the walls closing in, like the ship was giving them an encouraging shove towards their doom. You know, Dex said, as they sidestepped a bulkhead that had decided to flirt with the floor, I've always wondered what it'd be like to die in a spaceship out of some B-grade sci-fi. Rissa snorted. Always thought I'd go out in a blaze of glory, not a malfunctioning light show. They reached the core access hatch, which was sealed tighter than a miser's wallet. Dex set to work, his fingers dancing over the control panel like a virtuoso on a tight deadline. Think the aliens will wait for us to sort this out. If they've got any sense of fairness, sure, Rissa said dryly, checking her weapon. But I'm not holding my breath. With a hiss of compressed air, the hatch finally gave in to Dex's sweet mechanical nothings. Rissa stepped through, half expecting to find the core room filled with more bad jokes and worse surprises. Instead, it was just the usual blend of wires and blinking lights, except for one glaring addition, a hologram of the alien leader, projected in all its garish glory. Somehow, they'd hacked into the ship's system, and their face was a mix of confusion and determination. Earthlings. Your primitive maneuvers will not save you from our challenge, the hologram declared, its voice a weird cocktail of bravado and static. Just once, I'd like to meet an alien who doesn't want to engage in mortal combat, Dex sighed as he moved to the terminal. Can't they just bring cookies? Rissa approached the hologram, wishing she could strangle a projection. Listen, we don't want to fight. You're interpreting this all wrong. The alien tilted its head, an action that seemed to stretch the limits of its costume. Our intelligence indicates you have broadcast your willingness to engage. Yeah, about that, Rissa said, trying to channel all the diplomatic grace of a bull in a china shop. That was a mistake. We don't do space sports. Your human sports archive suggests otherwise, the alien retorted, a little too smug for Rissa's liking. She shot Dex a look. How much longer until we can shut this whole circus down? Almost there, Dex said, his fingers a blur over the controls. Just keep them talking. Talking, my favorite, Rissa replied, turning back to the alien. Look, we appreciate the offer, but can't we just swap recipes or something? The alien frowned, or whatever the equivalent was for something in a helmet. Your resistance is noted. Prepare for the match of the millennium. Match of the millennium, huh? Rissa muttered, more to herself than to anyone else. Could really use a drink. Good news, Captain, Dex interjected, the terminal beeping a promising sound. We can bypass the isolation. Should give us enough time to unfry this situation. Perfect, Rissa said, feeling a rare flicker of hope. AI-47, once we're clear, we're shutting down all external signals. Understood, Captain, AI-47 replied, sounding almost like it had missed the action. Rissa gave the alien hologram one last look. Sorry, pal, but your game's off the table. Your defiance will be remembered, the alien declared, still convinced it was on the winning team. Yeah, Rissa said, waving it off. Tell it to the scoreboard. With the core systems reset and the isolation protocol lifted, Rissa and Dex made their way back through the ship, stopping to check on Alara, who greeted them with her usual brand of sarcasm. Haven't blown up yet, Alara asked, though there was relief beneath the mockery. Not for lack of trying, Rissa replied, fighting a smile. Back on the bridge, Rissa took her seat, feeling oddly invigorated. Maybe it was the knowledge that they'd cheated death yet again, or that the aliens would need to find a new pastime. All right, let's get the hell out of this mess, Rissa commanded, fingers dancing over the controls. AI-47, plot us a course away from these lunatics. With pleasure, Captain, AI-47 said, the hum of engines a comforting background noise. As the Eccomancer lifted off, their screens free of alien static, Rissa leaned back, letting out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. We did it, Dex said, disbelief tinged with pride. For now, Rissa replied, her cynicism ever the faithful companion. Let's just hope the next alien encounter involves less sports and more peace treaties. Or booze, Alara suggested, echoing the thought on all their minds. Rissa chuckled, the sound a rare joy in the grim expanse of space. Here's to hoping. The ship hummed under their feet, the stars stretching into long, comforting lines as they sped away. For the moment, the universe felt just a little less hostile, and that was enough. Who knew, Rissa said. Surviving was the real sport all along. Sounds about right, Dex replied, leaning back with a satisfied grin. We've always been really good at that game. And with that, the Eccomancer sailed on, leaving behind one more chapter of absurdity in the interstellar annals of human resilience. The Eccomancer drifted through the cosmic soup, a clunky relic of a ship that managed to stay intact against all odds, like a drunkard who somehow never spills their drink. Inside, the atmosphere was less celebratory and more huddled masses yearning to be free of this nonsense. Rissa Palin sat in her captain's chair, or what passed for one, a creaky seat that had seen more ass than action, mulling over their latest close shave with destruction. It was comforting in a way, knowing that their survival relied less on skill and more on a cosmic coin toss. Dex Laren leaned against a bulkhead, wiping grease off his fingers with a rag that had definitely seen cleaner days. I gotta say, Captain, I'm starting to think space might not like us very much. Join the club, Rissa replied, eyes scanning the dimly lit bridge. If space was a hotel, we'd be the guests they stick in the room with the leaky pipes and the view of the dumpster. The intercom crackled, AI-47's voice cutting through the static like an overeager game show host. Good news, Captain. I've successfully recalibrated the sensors to ignore the alien transmission frequencies. Bad news, we're still stuck on this ship, Rissa muttered under her breath. Thanks, AI-47. Any chance we can get some peace and quiet now? Unlikely, AI-47 responded, as cheery as ever. There seems to be an increase in alien probe activity around our vicinity. Probes. Great. Just what we need, a close encounter of the probing kind, Dex commented, rubbing his temples as if trying to massage away the headache that came with galactic confrontation. Maybe they're just curious, Rissa suggested, though her tone suggested she'd sooner believe in unicorns. Or maybe they're planning on using us as target practice. Well, they can take a number, Dex said. Seems like every species in this quadrant wants a piece of the Eccomancer. Ilara Voss, the ship's medic and perennial voice of reason, or at least reason's snarky cousin, entered the bridge with a look that said she'd just as soon toss the whole crew into a cryosleep pod and call it a day. "I've been thinking." "Don't hurt yourself," Dex quipped, earning a half-hearted glare. About communication, Alara continued with the patience of a teacher dealing with particularly dense students. "These aliens seem fixated on sports, right? Maybe we can use that to communicate with them." Rissa raised an eyebrow. "You mean like challenge them to an interstellar game of rock, paper, scissors, or charades," Dex added. "Which would be a real challenge considering how they look." Alara ignored them. "If sports is their language, maybe we should play along, show them we're not a threat. Just a bunch of idiots trying to survive in a tin can." "Speak for yourself," Rissa said, though there was a glint of consideration in her eyes. "All right, let's say we humor this idea. What sport do we offer? I'm not exactly in peak physical condition here." "Neither am I," Alara replied dryly. "But we do have archives of Earth sports, and I'm sure AI-47 can whip up some sort of simulation. Nothing fancy, just enough to say, hey, we're not here to obliterate you." "Simulate a sport?" Dex asked, eyes lighting up with the possibility of a project that didn't involve imminent death. "Great, we'll be the first travelers to lose an interstellar game of soccer," Rissa said, shaking her head. "But if it gets them off our backs, I'm willing to give it a shot." AI-47 set up a sports simulation from the archives, Alara instructed, managing to sound both commanding and exasperated. "Start with something simple, like dodgeball." "Dodgeball, really?" Dex said. "What are we in middle school?" "I'm open to suggestions," Alara shot back. "But it needs to be something we can manage, even without a proper team." AI-47 chimed in, ever the enthusiastic conspirator. "Simulation parameters set, ready to broadcast at your command." Rissa leaned back in her chair, trying to envision the absurdity of their current situation. Here they were, stranded in the middle of nowhere, about to play digital dodgeball with aliens who probably didn't even have the appendages for it. "All right, let's see if this peace offering doesn't come back to bite us." "Fingers crossed," Dex said, mimicking a motion that was as pointless as it was hopeful. With a few commands, AI-47 initiated the broadcast, the Echomancer's screens flickering to life with the colorful chaos of an artificially generated dodgeball court. From the outside, it probably looked like a bizarre light show meant to confuse, entertain, or infuriate. Rissa could almost hear the aliens scratching whatever might pass for their heads. "Now we wait," Alara said, folding her arms. "And hope they have a sense of humor, or at least the patience not to vaporize us on sight," Rissa replied, tapping her fingers against the arm of her chair. The waiting was agony, the kind that stretched seconds into hours as the crew sat in awkward silence, the simulated game flickering across their monitors like a ghost of Earth past. Finally, AI-47 broke the silence. "Incoming transmission from the alien craft." Rissa straightened, an involuntary reflex when faced with the unknown. "Let's hear it." The alien leader's hologram flickered back onto the screen, looking no less ridiculous in its costume. It spoke with a voice that was more static than substance, yet somehow managed to convey curiosity. "Earthlings, we observe your offering of sport." Rissa swallowed, her heart doing a little dance she hadn't authorized. "Yeah, we figured a game might be a better way to introduce ourselves." The alien tilted its head, considering. "Your game is strange, but intriguing." "Just like us," Dex whispered, earning a nudge from Alara. The alien continued. "We accept your challenge." "Prepare for engagement." Rissa blinked, momentarily forgetting how to breathe. "Engagement, you mean? Like a real game?" "Affirmative. Our ship will initiate contact shortly." The transmission ended, leaving Rissa staring at the screen as her brain tried to catch up. "Well, that's something." "Hope we've been practicing," Dex said, though his tone suggested he was as shocked as the rest of them. "What do we do now?" Alara asked, her confidence momentarily shaken by the unexpected turn of events. Rissa stood, determination settling over her like a familiar coat. "We play, and we win, Or at least don't die. Sounds like a plan, Dex said, though there was a tremor in his voice that belied his bravado. AI-47, make sure our systems are ready for whatever contact the aliens have in mind, Rissa ordered, her mind already shifting gears from disbelief to strategy. Understood, Captain, AI-47 replied, its efficiency a small comfort in the midst of chaos. As the crew began preparations, Rissa couldn't help but feel a strange sense of excitement amid the fear. Maybe this was the start of something new, a step towards understanding rather than annihilation. Or maybe, she thought with a wry smile, it was just another step towards the universe's most elaborate practical joke. Rissa Palin leaned back in her battered captain's chair, the springs creaking like an old man trying to dance. The holographic dodgeball court flickered out, leaving the bridge dimly lit by the glow of the control panels. She'd heard of diplomacy through sport, but this was taking the concept to a whole new level of absurdity. It was like trying to tame a rabid tiger with a game of fetch. AI-47, you still with us? Rissa asked, her voice a mix of sarcasm and caution. Always, Captain, chirped the AI, its tone as annoyingly cheerful as ever. Though I must report an anomaly in the life support systems. Rissa's eyebrow shot up, a reflex she'd developed from years of dealing with one crisis after another. Define anomaly. An anomaly is, cut the dictionary Act 47, Rissa interrupted. What's actually happening? There was a pause, as if the AI was gathering its thoughts or perhaps trying to simulate an expression of concern. Someone, or something, is attempting to recalibrate the oxygen levels. It appears to be an external influence. Perfect, Rissa muttered. Just what we need. An alien health spa gone wrong. Ilara Voss, the ship's medic, strolled onto the bridge with the demeanor of someone who'd just discovered a stain on their favorite shirt. Why do I feel like I'm walking into a bad episode of Galactic Disasters? Probably because you are, Dex replied, his fingers working furiously over the engineering panel. The aliens might be trying to turn our ship into a vacuum-packed sardine tin. Good, Ilara said with a smirk. I always wanted to die in a more interesting way than old age. Speaking of interesting ways to die, Rissa interjected, any ideas on how to stop them? Dex scratched his chin, a gesture that seemed more for effect than thought. We could try rerouting power to the life support systems. Might delay the inevitable. Delay sounds good, Rissa said. I'm a big fan of procrastination when it comes to dying. Ilara sighed, her patience wearing thinner than a politician's promises. Anything I can do to help? Not unless you can talk down homicidal alien probes, Rissa replied, her tone as dry as the Sahara. AI-47's voice came over the intercom again. Captain, the alien probes are approaching. They seem to be interpreting our practice session as an aggressive maneuver. Of course they do, Rissa said, rolling her eyes. Why wouldn't a friendly game of dodgeball scream attack? Dex let out a low whistle, leaning back from the console. Well, this is it. The moment we all become a cautionary tale for future generations. Don't play dodgeball with aliens, or at least, don't lose, Ilara added, half joking, half serious. Rissa stood, her mind racing through potential strategies, each more ludicrous than the last. All right, new plan. We need to show them we're not a threat. Ideas, bake them a piece cake, Dex suggested with a shrug. Ilara snorted. Oh sure, and then we can play pin the tail on the space invader. AI-47, can we send them a message? Rissa asked, ignoring the banter. Yes, Captain. Audio or visual? Let's go with audio. I'm not in the mood for a holographic dress rehearsal. Recording, AI-47 confirmed, a tone of expectant silence following. Rissa took a deep breath, channeling every bit of her reluctant leadership into her voice. To the unidentified alien vessels, we apologize for any misunderstanding. Our previous transmission was a game simulation. We come in peace, not pieces. There was a moment of silence, the kind that stretches just long enough to make you question every choice you've ever made. Then the alien transmission crackled back to life. Earthlings, the alien leader's voice buzzed through the speakers, your explanation is. Acceptable. However, we require assurance of your intentions. Rissa glanced at her crew, a ragtag band of misfits and survivors. Assurance wasn't exactly something they carried in surplus. And how do you propose we provide that assurance, demonstrate a peaceful act? The alien replied, its tone a mix of curiosity and skepticism. Sure, why not? Rissa said, sarcasm dripping from her words like honey from a broken jar. I'll just whip up a peace treaty with a side of fries. Dex, Ilara said, in a rare moment of seriousness, what's the status on our power levels? Dex looked at his console, his face a portrait of existential dread. Running on fumes. We're one circuit away from a blackout. Great, Rissa muttered, rubbing her temples. AI-47, any chance we can reset the life support systems remotely? I'm afraid that would require manual intervention. AI-47 replied, its optimism grating against the grim reality. Figures, Rissa said. All right, let's suit up. Ilara, you're with me. Dex, keep the ship stable. Dex nodded, though his confidence was about as solid as a politician's promise. Got it, Cap. I'll keep the lights on as long as I can. Ilara sighed, resigning herself to yet another near-death experience. Here's hoping we don't end up a part of the ship's decor. As Rissa and Ilara made their way to the maintenance bay, the ship groaned around them, a symphony of creaks and clanks that served as a constant reminder of its age and their precarious situation. It was like walking through the belly of a giant beast with arthritis. Ever get the feeling the universe is just messing with us? Ilara asked, adjusting her suit. All the time, Rissa replied, securing her helmet. I swear if it could laugh, we'd be the punchline to its favorite joke. They entered the airlock, the door sealing behind them with a heavy thunk. Rissa tapped a few buttons on the control panel, watching as the outer hatch slowly opened to reveal the abyss beyond. Ready for a stroll in the cosmic wasteland? Rissa asked, stepping onto the maintenance ladder. Ilara followed, her grip steady despite the zero gravity. I live for moments like these. Or at least I survived them. They descended towards the life support module, the only sound their breathing and the distant hum of the ship's engines. Rissa could almost feel the weight of the universe pressing down on them, a reminder of just how small and insignificant they truly were. See anything? Ilara asked, peering over Rissa's shoulder. Just a lot of wires and bad decisions, Rissa replied, her flashlight sweeping over the module's surface. Ilara chuckled, though there was little humor in it. Isn't that what life's all about, pretty much, Rissa said, reaching for the access panel. All right, let's see if we can convince this old girl to keep us alive a bit longer. As they worked, the minutes stretched into eternity, each second a battle against the encroaching darkness, both inside the ship and in their minds. It was easy to forget about the alien threat when faced with the more immediate danger of asphyxiation. Hey, Ilara, Rissa said, her voice barely above a whisper as she fumbled with a particularly stubborn bolt. Yeah, you ever think about what you'd do if we got out of this alive? Ilara paused, considering the question as she spliced a couple of wires with practiced ease. I don't know. Maybe open a bar. Serve the best damn cocktail this side of the galaxy. Rissa smiled, though it was hidden behind her helmet's visor. I'd drink to that. Finally, with a satisfying click, the module hummed to life, the air around them feeling just a little less hostile. Rissa let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding, the weight of the moment lifting ever so slightly. Looks like we're not dead yet, Ilara said, a hint of relief coloring her voice. Not today, Rissa agreed, her tone a mix of triumph and exhaustion. As they began their ascent back to the bridge, the ship seemed to settle around them as if acknowledging their small victory. It was a fleeting moment of peace in a universe that seemed hell-bent on chaos. Rissa, Ilara, you there? Dex's voice crackled over the comm, a lifeline in the silence. Still here, Rissa replied. How's our diplomatic situation? Complicated, Dex said. The aliens are still hanging around, waiting for us to prove we're not a threat. Of course they are, Rissa said, rolling her eyes. because playing dodgeball wasn't enough to convince them of our utter incompetence. Maybe we should have gone with charades, Ilara quipped as they reached the airlock. Next time we'll mime our way out of trouble, Rissa said, stepping inside and initiating the pressurization sequence. As they returned to the bridge, the atmosphere felt different, a little more charged, a little less doomed. It was a small victory, but in their world, small victories were all they had. Glad to see you two still breathing, Dex said, offering a mock salute as they entered. Breathing's overrated, Ilara replied, though her smile was genuine. Rissa took her seat, the captain's chair a familiar anchor in the storm of uncertainty. All right, team. Let's figure out how to convince those aliens we're not worth their time. Maybe we can offer them a game of Monopoly. Dex suggested, half serious. Perfect, Rissa said with a dry chuckle. Nothing says peace like bankrupting your opponent. As the crew settled into their roles, each member a vital cog in the machine of survival, Rissa felt a flicker of hope amid the chaos. They were battered, bruised, and outnumbered, but they were still here, still fighting. And in the vast, indifferent expanse of space, sometimes that was enough. Rissa Palin sat hunched in the captain's chair, glaring at the blinking lights of the Echomancer's console like they had personally insulted her. The ship was as lively as a funeral, and about as cheerful. She felt like the universe's most reluctant babysitter, tasked with keeping this clunky metal death trap floating through space. Okay, folks, Rissa announced to her ragtag crew, we've got alien probes outside who think our dodgeball replay was a declaration of war. I'd say it's a misunderstanding, but they don't seem the type to accept sorry, we were just horsing around. Maybe they just want to play on our team, Dex Laren chimed in, half buried in the guts of a fried console. Nothing says intergalactic friendship like a free-for-all with space balls. Right, Rissa snorted. And maybe my next promotion will be to Queen of the Galaxy, Doctor. Ilara Voss, eternally sarcastic and eye-roll ready, leaned against the wall. Does that promotion come with medical insurance? Because I think we could use some group therapy after this. AI-47's voice buzzed from the intercom, far too cheerful for the current mood. Captain, I have detected a potential solution in the ship's sports database, an obscure override feature connected to the AI systems. Perhaps it could be used to demonstrate our peaceful intentions. Rissa blinked. A hidden override in the sports database, because that's exactly where I'd hide the ship's emergency salvation, right next to the how to lose at chess manual. Dex pulled himself up, wiping grease on his sleeve in an effort that only made it worse. So what, we throw a game and hope they don't notice we're also throwing our dignity out the airlock? Pretty much, Rissa said, mustering up the enthusiasm of a sloth on a caffeine crash. But considering our alternatives, death by alien probe, running out of air, or dying of boredom, it might be worth a shot. Ilara sighed. Right, because nothing screams we come in peace like a sports match. Why don't we just challenge them to a penalty shootout next? Ilara, if sarcasm were currency, you'd be richer than the entire coalition, Rissa quipped. AI-47, explain exactly what this override does. AI-47's digital tones were almost apologetic. The override allows for the projection of a peace treaty as a scripted simulation. It's meant to be an educational tool for peaceful negotiations through sportsmanship. Educational tool, Dex chuckled. In other words, a cosmic participation trophy for not blowing each other up. Exactly, Rissa replied. AI-47, can you set it up to broadcast to the alien probes? Affirmative, AI-47 said, sounding pleased with itself. Shall I prepare the simulation? Rissa rubbed her temples, trying to massage away the growing headache. Yeah, let's run it. If we're lucky, they'll laugh themselves into leaving us alone. The bridge's tension was palpable, like a held breath waiting for the punchline of a bad joke. Rissa watched the screen, where a holographic interface flickered to life, displaying the override options with all the speed and grace of a geriatric tortoise. Let's see, Rissa mused, scrolling through the options. We've got galactic hockey, interstellar ping pong, and, oh, here we go, Unity Ball. Unity Ball? Dex asked skeptically. Sounds like a game where everyone loses. Sounds about right for us, Alara added with dry wit. AI-47, boot up Unity Ball and send the projection to our friendly neighborhood probes, Rissa ordered. As the simulation began to run, the bridge was bathed in a soft blue glow, casting an eerie yet oddly comforting light over the crew. The hologram displayed a virtual field where avatars of various species convened, including a humorous rendition of humanity as a gangly, awkward figure, attempting to juggle multiple tasks at once. "Look at that," Alara said, pointing. "They've captured the essence of human multitasking perfectly, failing at everything simultaneously." Rissa smirked. "If only we could make a career out of it." The simulation continued, depicting various species engaging in cooperative activities, each scenario ending with a handshake or equivalent gesture. It was all incredibly cheesy, like an after-school special with a cosmic twist. "Think it'll work?" Dex asked, running a hand through his perpetually messy hair. "No idea," Rissa admitted. "But if this doesn't convince them, maybe they'll just be too confused to fire. Or they'll decide they are allergic to whatever the hell we just showed them and take off," Alara suggested. Rissa's gaze flicked to the external sensors. The probes had stopped advancing, hovering with what she optimistically interpreted as curiosity. Maybe the universe had decided to cut them a break, or maybe it was just setting them up for an even bigger punchline down the line. "Probes are holding position," AI-47 announced. "The simulation appears to have piqued their interest." "Well, I'll be damned," Rissa said, a hint of disbelief in her voice. "I guess they're buying this interstellar Kumbaya session." Dex let out a laugh that was more relief than humor. "I can't believe that worked. What's next? We invite them over for a virtual barbecue." "Don't get too comfortable," Rissa warned. "We've still got a ship running on hope and duct tape." The crew watched as the probe slowly began to retreat, likely still processing the sheer absurdity of what they'd witnessed. There was an unspoken agreement not to question their luck too much. After all, in space, tempting fate was as dangerous as tempting an open airlock. "So, we're not dead," Alara summed up, crossing her arms. "What's the next disaster waiting in line?" Rissa chuckled, a mix of genuine amusement and exhaustion. "Probably something that'll make this look like a walk in the park." "Knowing our luck," Dex added, "the universe is probably just reloading." The bridge settled into a slightly more relaxed atmosphere, though the air was still heavy with the knowledge that their problems were far from over. But for a brief moment, they savored the small victory, an unexpected reprieve in an unending stream of chaos. "AI-47, Rissa said, breaking the contemplative silence, "keep monitoring those probes. Let me know the second they so much as twitch." "Of course, Captain," AI-47 replied, its voice a digital nod of reassurance. Rissa leaned back in her chair, eyes scanning the bridge and its occupants. Each of them was a survivor in their own right, scarred but still standing. Somehow, against all odds, they made a strange kind of sense together, an unlikely family held together by stubbornness and the shared experience of narrowly avoiding cosmic calamity. "All right, team," Rissa said, a hint of warmth creeping into her voice against her better judgment. "Let's figure out how to get this rust bucket back on course and see if we can squeeze another miracle out of our hat." "Sounds like a plan," Dex agreed, already moving to the next problem with an ingrained tenacity. "Yeah," Alara added, her voice dry as ever but carrying a note of camaraderie. "And if anyone else wants to pick a fight, let's just send them the blooper reel. Maybe the galaxy just hates competition," Rissa mused aloud. "After all, we're the best at being the worst." With the bridge's tension temporarily lifted, the crew focused on the myriad of tasks that kept the Ecomancer limping through space. There were systems to repair, supplies to ration, and a shipload of issues demanding attention. But for now, they were alive, breathing, and still in the game. And in this unforgiving universe, that was a victory worth savoring, even if just for a moment. Rissa looked at the screen as the Unity Ball simulation continued to play out. It was like watching a space-age version of those outdated corporate team-building exercises. Only the stakes were a tad higher, like avoiding vaporization. "If I ever make it back to civilization," Rissa muttered, "I'm patenting this as the ultimate conflict resolution tool. Mediation through sports. Save your marriage or your species." "Would make for a hell of an infomercial," Dex added, still fiddling with a stubborn connection in the console. "Order now, and we'll throw in an extra peace treaty, free of charge." "Terms and conditions apply," Ilara chimed in, her sarcasm a steady presence in the chaos. "Void where prohibited by universal laws of warfare." As the avatars on the screen played their game, Rissa noticed the alien probes had not only stopped advancing, but had angled themselves in what appeared to be a receptive formation. They were either preparing to listen or aligning for a synchronized assault, but she chose to be an optimist, or at least the version of an optimist that involved less imminent death. AI-47, Rissa called, hoping the chipper AI was as effective as it was annoying. "Let's adjust the broadcast frequency. We need this message to be as clear as a neon sign on a drunken night." "Adjusting frequencies now, Captain," AI-47 replied with its usual, unsettling cheer. "Also, might I suggest we conclude with a gesture of goodwill? The universal symbol for peace often includes an exchange of gifts or shared cultural experiences." "Great idea," Rissa said dryly, "except our gift shop's out of stock, and the only cultural experience we have is this ship's questionable sanitation standards." Dex snorted. "I'm pretty sure our hygiene alone qualifies as biological warfare." "Noted," Rissa replied, shaking her head. "Just keep that simulation running. Maybe the visuals will distract them from everything else." The screen flickered as AI-47 worked its magic, or whatever it was that AI did to make things happen. The simulated field expanded, showcasing an even larger array of interstellar athletes, each clumsily coordinated yet undeniably earnest in their attempts to unite. "Pretty heartwarming if you ignore the death rays," Ilara said, arms crossed as she watched the display. "Reminds me of a bad date I had once." "Careful," Rissa responded. "We're trying to end hostilities, not start a romantic comedy." As the digital spectacle unfolded, AI-47 interjected with a new update. "Captain, I believe we are achieving some level of understanding with the alien probes. Our message appears to be reaching its intended audience." "Let's hope they're not the critics," Rissa replied, but the weight on her shoulders felt a little lighter. "Keep monitoring their movements. Dex, any luck with the console?" Dex huffed, looking like a mechanic who just discovered his car parts were made of chocolate. "It's fried beyond belief. I think the only thing keeping us from floating aimlessly is pure spite." "Whatever works," Rissa said, pushing thoughts of malfunctioning consoles to the back of her mind. "For now, if it ain't broke, or at least not completely dead, don't fix it." The Unity Ball simulation continued to roll, its avatars stumbling toward an awkward but heartfelt conclusion. The probes, still in their curious formation, seemed to be paying close attention, their sensors likely working overtime to decode the message. "All right, folks," Rissa announced, voice edged with determination. "Time to wrap this up with a bow and hope they don't notice we're all out of ribbon. Think we can sell them on the idea that we're the galaxy's version of a sitcom?" Ilara asked, half joking. "Either that or a tragicomedy," Dex shot back, finally emerging from the console like a mole from its hole. "All we're missing is the laugh track." Rissa scanned the monitors, each displaying various angles of the unfolding digital diplomacy. The aliens seemed to be responding, albeit in a way that defied easy explanation. Maybe it was the holographic equivalent of a standing ovation, or maybe they were just charging their weapons. "AI-47, Rissa said, keeping her tone upbeat against her better judgment. "Let's finish the simulation with a grand gesture. Make it something that screams unity and hope without triggering any more life-threatening misunderstandings." "Initiating final sequence," AI-47 confirmed, its voice a soothing balm to the underlying tension, uploading a visual of universal harmony with an emphasis on collaboration over conflict. Dex leaned back against the wall, wiping his hands on his jumpsuit. If this works, I'm officially retiring from anything involving alien diplomacy. I figure I've peaked. Don't start planning your victory lap just yet, Rissa countered. If they buy this, we still have to get the ship back to a state that doesn't resemble a floating junkyard. The final act of the simulation unfolded on the screen, a symphony of colors and shapes that suggested peace, goodwill, and a shared future. It was a digital masterpiece, and Rissa couldn't help but feel a strange sense of satisfaction, or maybe it was just the relief of not being immediately obliterated. Probes are responding, AI-47 announced, its tone as close to excited as a machine could get. They are disengaging their weapons and initiating a retreat. It appears we have successfully communicated our intentions. Rissa let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Well, I'll be damned. Looks like we might have pulled this off after all. Miracle of miracles, Ilara added, though her smile was genuine if a tad weary. Dex gave a mock salute to the screen. So long, and thanks for not blowing us to smithereens. Rissa leaned forward, her gaze fixed on the retreating probes. They were drifting back, perhaps to whatever distant part of the galaxy they'd come from, likely with a new appreciation or bewilderment for human ingenuity. AI-47, keep an eye on their trajectory, Rissa instructed. I don't want any surprises if they decide to make an unscheduled return. Understood, Captain, AI-47 replied, its voice a digital nod of agreement. I will maintain surveillance until they are beyond our sensor's range. The crew watched as the last of the probes disappeared from view, the tension on the bridge finally beginning to dissipate. It wasn't a complete victory, but it was enough to get them through another day, which was more than they dared hope for. What's the plan now? Dex asked, stretching out his arms with a groan. Now, Rissa said, her voice carrying the weight of command, we focus on getting this ship back in fighting shape. We've had our moment of peace, but we all know it won't last. Ilara nodded, the ever-present cynicism tempered by a hint of resolve. Guess it's back to the usual grind then. Yep, Rissa replied, clapping her hands together. Let's get to it, people. We might have bought ourselves some time, but the universe isn't going to wait for us to catch up. With that, the crew set about their tasks, each one a vital piece in the puzzle of survival. They might not have had all the answers, or any, really, but they'd proven they could navigate the chaos with a little creativity and a lot of gallows humor. And in the vast, uncaring expanse of space, that was often enough. As the team dispersed, Rissa caught a glimpse of herself in the reflection of the console. Tired eyes, a face lined with too many close calls but still standing. She turned away, focusing on what lay ahead. AI-47, she said, her voice carrying the steadiness of command, give me a status report on the ship's critical systems. Let's see if we've got any miracles left in this old bucket. Compiling data now, Captain, AI-47 responded, ever the dutiful sentinel. While the AI worked, Rissa allowed herself a moment of reflection. They'd survived a potentially deadly encounter with alien forces using nothing more than a simulated sports event. It was absurd, improbable, and undeniably human. Rissa knew they were far from safe, but they'd earned a little breathing room. The universe might be full of unforgiving dangers, but they'd faced them with wit, perseverance, and just enough insanity to get by. Captain, AI-47 said, systems report is ready. Would you like the good news or the bad? Let's start with the bad, Rissa replied, and work our way up. As AI-47 began its report, Rissa listened with an ear for opportunity. They might have been battered and bruised, but they were still in the game. And as long as they kept fighting, there was a chance, however slim, that they'd see another day. And in the grim, unyielding darkness of space, sometimes a chance was all you needed. Rissa Palin leaned back in her chair, feeling the weight lift ever so slightly from her shoulders. The Eckermancer creaked like an old man's knees, but it was still holding together, barely, like the fragile piece they'd just managed to cobble together with the alien probes. She looked around the bridge, seeing the faces of her motley crew. Dr. Ilara Voss, the ship's medic, wore a perpetual smirk, as if she just told the universe to get stuffed and it had listened. Dex Laren, the ship's engineer, was busy poking at a console that looked like it had been through a blender and back. "All right, team," Rissa said, clapping her hands together to get their attention. "We've survived yet another episode of Can We Not Die Today. Now let's get the ship back in shape before something else tries to kill us," Dex snorted. "You mean besides our own incompetence?" "Exactly," Rissa shot back. "Ilara, check on the cryosleep pods. Make sure they're ready in case we need a quick escape from this floating death trap." Ilara rolled her eyes but nodded. "Sure, Captain. I'll make sure they are as inviting as a coffin at a vampire convention." As Ilara sauntered off, Rissa turned to AI-47, who had been uncharacteristically quiet. AI-47, any update on the ship's critical systems? "Certainly, Captain," the AI chirped, sounding as peppy as a motivational poster in a morgue. "Life support systems are stable, although the oxygen levels are reminiscent of a bad date with an inflatable doll." "Sounds about right," Rissa muttered, rubbing her temples. "Any chance we can get a status on our communication systems? We need to establish contact with those probes before they decide to come back with friends." Dex, who had finally given up on the console, wiped his hands on his jumpsuit. "I can rig something up, but don't expect miracles. This ship's more patchwork than a quilt in a thrift store." "Just do what you can," Rissa replied, "and try not to blow us up in the process." Dex gave her a lazy salute before diving back into the electrical spaghetti that was the ship's wiring. Rissa turned her attention back to AI-47. "Let's try and establish a communication link with the probes. If we can talk to them, maybe we can convince them not to vaporize us on site." "Launching communication protocols now," AI-47 confirmed, its artificial enthusiasm as grating as ever. "Would you like me to include an apology for the dodgeball misunderstanding?" Rissa chuckled despite herself. "Can't hurt. Throw in some compliments about their formation. Maybe they'll appreciate the flattery." As AI-47 busied itself with the communication attempts, Rissa allowed herself a moment to breathe. The ship was a wreck, her crew was one sarcastic comment away from mutiny, and the best they could hope for was not dying in the next 10 minutes. But they'd gotten this far, and that was something. "Hey, Captain," Ilara called from the doorway. "If we survive this, maybe we should start a travel agency. See the stars, meet friendly aliens, narrowly avoid death by incompetence. We could make a fortune." Rissa grinned. "I'll get the brochures printed up. You think anyone would buy it?" Ilara shrugged. "People buy all sorts of crap." "Why not this?" Dex crawled out from under the console looking more greasy rat than engineer. "I've managed to get the comm system back online," he announced triumphantly. "Or at least it's not actively trying to kill us anymore." "Good work, Dex," Rissa said. "Ilara, you got the cryosleep pods sorted." "All systems go," Ilara confirmed. "They're as ready as they'll ever be, though I wouldn't count on them being comfortable. More like a tin can with optional frostbite." "Sounds like a luxury cruise compared to this," Rissa said. "All right, AI-47, let's see if we can get a line to the probes." The AI digital interface flickered to life, the screen displaying a series of alien glyphs that looked like the result of a drunken octopus getting creative with a typewriter. Rissa squinted at the display, trying to make sense of the symbols. "Are those words?" Dex asked, peering over her shoulder. "As much as anything in this galaxy is," Rissa replied. "AI-47, any luck translating?" "Working on it, Captain," the AI responded cheerfully. "Though I must admit, my expertise in ancient languages is about as polished as a rusted hull plate." "Great," Ilara said, leaning against the wall. "So we're relying on a machine that can barely speak our language to translate alien gibberish." "What could possibly go wrong?" "Plenty," Rissa admitted. "But we've got to try. We've come this far on dumb luck and sheer obstinacy, no point stopping now. Minutes dragged on like hours as they waited for AI-47 to work its dubious magic. The bridge was silent, save for the occasional curse from Dex as he wrestled with the ship's battered systems, and the sound of Alara humming some ancient Earth tune under her breath. Finally, AI-47 spoke up, its voice tinged with an unwarranted optimism. "I believe I've managed a partial translation, Captain. It seems they are acknowledging our message and are open to further communication." "Well, that's a relief," Rissa said. "Let's keep them talking. Maybe we can convince them we're more useful alive than dead, or at least more entertaining," Alara quipped. "We could host a galactic comedy show. Watch the humans bumble their way through space." Dex chuckled. "I'd pay to see that." "Focus, people," Rissa said, though she couldn't help but smile. AI-47, send them a response. Let them know we're eager to establish peaceful relations and that we promise not to throw any more rogue dodgeballs. Message sent, AI-47 confirmed, its digital tones as upbeat as ever. "I also included a suggestion for a collaborative effort to enhance interspecies understanding." Risser raised an eyebrow. "And how exactly did you word that?" "Something to the effect of let's not kill each other and maybe learn a thing or two along the way." "Short and sweet," Rissa said with a nod. Now we wait and see if they are in a forgiving mood. Silence descended on the bridge once more, the crew left alone with their thoughts and the faint hum of the ship's machinery. Rissa watched the screens intently, looking for any sign of a response. It wasn't long before AI-47 chimed in again. "Incoming transmission, Captain. They seem interested in a cultural exchange and have proposed a meeting at a neutral location." "Neutral location?" Dex asked. "Where would that be? The galactic equivalent of Switzerland?" "More like a dusty asteroid with fewer amenities," Alara replied. "But hey, beggars can't be choosers." Rissa considered the proposal, weighing the risks against the potential rewards. They'd taken a chance with the Unity Ball simulation, and it had paid off. Maybe this was their chance to really turn things around. "Let's accept the invitation," Rissa decided. AI-47, send back our agreement and see if you can pinpoint this meeting place. Dex, get the engines primed. I have a feeling we'll be needing them soon. The crew moved with renewed purpose, their earlier tension replaced by a cautious optimism. They'd managed to stave off disaster once, and now they had a chance to build on that success. As the ship groaned and rattled into action, Rissa took a moment to reflect on the situation. Humanity was a stubborn, chaotic breed, prone to mistakes and missteps, but also capable of surprising ingenuity. They'd come a long way from the confines of their home planet, and now, standing on the precipice of a new chapter, there was a faint glimmer of hope. AI-47, Rissa said, her voice steady and sure, keep monitoring the alien channels. Let me know if anything changes. Of course, Captain, the AI replied. I'll stay vigilant. Despite the countless challenges ahead, Rissa couldn't help but feel a strange sense of camaraderie with her crew. They were a ragtag bunch, held together by duct tape, sarcasm, and sheer willpower. But in the vast emptiness of space, that was more than enough to carry them forward. "All right," Rissa called out, "let's get ready for this meeting. Show these aliens what humanity's really made of." "Misplaced optimism and questionable hygiene," Alara suggested. "Exactly," Rissa agreed with a grin. "And maybe, just maybe, a little bit of heart." With that, the Ecomancer set off toward the unknown, a beacon of stubborn resilience in the unforgiving void. They had no guarantees, no promises of safety or success. But as long as they kept moving forward, they'd continue to defy the odds. And in the end, wasn't that what being human was all about?